Revenge films.
My name is Sarah. I live with my husband Ryan and our 3 children, but suddenly one day I lost my husband due to illness, and I was left to raise my kids alone. My husband was kind, passionate about his work, and really helpful at home with the kids too. He was an ideal husband like you would see in the movies. Ever since his illness was discovered, I desperately tried to support my husband, but he was given 2 months to live, and soon after he passed away. Because my husband was still young, we weren't able to receive a very high insurance payout, and even though we received a survivor's pension after that, it cost money to raise 3 children, so I thought about finding a job. After the funeral, as I was cleaning up my husband's room, I found a bank book that contained all of his savings, as well as a will that he must have written when his illness was discovered. That will read,
"With this money, please stay as a full-time housewife as you have been until the children get old, and so that you can be by their side."
My husband's hobby was always to save, and there was over $200,000 in his account that he had left while he was still alive. When I read the will, I thought it was very like Ryan, who was always thinking about the kids. But then I imagined my husband and how much he loved them, and it brought tears to my eyes. After reading his will, just as he had said, I vowed to put my all into my children, when suddenly one day my mother-in-law showed up. My mother-in-law had always been dirty with money, and before Ryan passed, she would come to ask for large amounts of money. And every now and then, she would come begging to borrow money from us. On top of that, her harassment towards me was terrible, and every time that we would go back to Ryan's family's house,
"You useless full-time housewife daughter-in-law, if you have no intention of earning money, then get a divorce."
she would say things like that to me. When my husband found out, he was furious, and he said that he wanted to cut all ties with his mother. With all of that in the past, when his illness was discovered, my husband made sure not to leave a single penny for his mother. Even when he was in the hospital, she never worried about him and never once came to visit the hospital. And yet, she suddenly showed up to my house and said that she wanted to know the exact details of the will that Ryan left behind. When I told her that he didn't leave a single penny for her without sugarcoating anything, my mother-in-law, who had been acting like she was sad until now, suddenly burst into a tantrum. I saw my children who were there start shaking in fear, and I knew that I needed to somehow kick my mother-in-law out of there as soon as possible.
"He didn't leave a single penny for his mother. You need to ignore that will, and you better give me that money."
That's not going to happen. Following a will is demanded by law, and as you can see here, doesn't it say that all of this inheritance is to be used for the children?
"For the children? Well then, hand over those children and all that inheritance."
There's no way I'm gonna do that. If you're just here for money, then please go home now. When I tried to kick her out, my mother-in-law went crazy, and she grabbed the scissors that were nearby and ran straight towards my young children.
"So you don't care what happens to them? Why don't you shut your mouth and listen to me?"
Mommy, I'm scared. Don't worry, everybody come over here. Come and hide behind your mom. My mother-in-law then turned towards us, and as she was swinging the scissors at me, it was right at the moment. My mother happened to come by coincidence because she was worried about me after my husband passed away, and she had called the police and they came running over. Of course, my mother-in-law was arrested on the spot. Even though she was given a harsh warning from the police, even after that, my mother-in-law's harassment only escalated from there. The pots in our yard were shattered, our windows would get shattered, and her terrible harassment continued as we had to live in constant fear. There were times that I would get overwhelmed with sadness, wishing that my husband could be here in times like this, but I told myself over and over again that I had to protect my children, and I did everything I could to stay strong. I thought about going to the police again, but I thought that maybe my mother-in-law had gone a little crazy because she had just lost her son as well, so I decided to assess the situation for a while. However, no matter how much time passed, she never stopped harassing us. If I was at home, she would bang on the front door, and she would yell so loud that it would cause a neighborhood disturbance.
"You thief, you wretched woman! Give me back my son's money!"
Excuse me? Please don't yell that loud.
"You better shut up when you're the thief. I'm the one that raised my son, you know. I don't care if you're the wife or whatever you are, but there's no way that I'm gonna let you steal the inheritance. Now hurry up and hand over the money."
You're causing a disturbance in the neighborhood, so please, please leave us.
"As if I'm gonna leave until you hand over that money."
As she said that, my mother-in-law continued to bang on the door for hours, and all I could do was hold my children who were shaking inside of the house. Don't worry, your mom is right here. I'm so scared. Daddy, help us! The children were longing for their dad, and they started crying. That was when I felt all the sympathy towards my mother-in-law disappear from inside of me. It may be true that she was the one that gave birth to my husband and raised him, but I know that what my mother-in-law was doing right now was something that my husband would have hated. When I thought that, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. After causing quite the commotion, perhaps she got tired because she finally went home. When the banging on the front door calmed down, the children must have been exhausted because they fell asleep straight away. Seeing their faces as they fell asleep, I thought that there must be something more that I could do to help return their lives back to peaceful days and safety, and I started to think of a plan for the future. As a result, I felt I had no choice but to go to the police, and the next time my mother-in-law tried to harass us, I vowed to call the police and report her immediately. But then one day, when I got home from grocery shopping, my house was surrounded by police cars and an ambulance, and there were people crowding all around. I panicked and ran over, and that was right as my mother-in-law was being carried out in a stretcher. She was unconscious, and there was blood streaming from her head, and her clothes were covered in dirt. That strong attitude that she had just a few days ago almost felt like a myth because she looked so weak. And as I watched my mother-in-law get carried away, I couldn't hide my shock. I couldn't understand what was going on when the police came over to talk to me. According to them, while I was out buying the groceries, they found my mother-in-law in the lawn, collapsed with blood streaming from her head. They asked me if I might have any idea what was going on, and I explained to them the recent harassment that she had been inflicting on us. When the police went around the neighborhood to ask around and investigate, there was a witness in the neighborhood that said they saw her trying to get into the house from the second floor window, but that her foot slipped and they saw her fall to the ground. My mother-in-law must have scoped around the entire house before confirming that she wouldn't be able to sneak in through the first floor, and she must have thought that if she got up to the second floor, she would be able to break in. When the policemen heard that, they confirmed the belongings of my mother-in-law, and they found a hammer to break the window, as well as kerosene and matches. This was after my mother-in-law had already been transported to the hospital, so the police said that they would ask her about the situation when she regained consciousness, and they left. The next day, my mother-in-law woke up. However, she became paralyzed from the waist down, and she was left to be in a wheelchair. She went to physical therapy and slowly started to regain motion, and that was when she was transported from the hospital to police station for questioning.
What is this?
That looks like a hammer, matches, and kerosene.
What were you trying to do with these items?
Well, that's,
There was somebody who saw you climbing up on Miss Sarah's roof. What were you trying to do? Speak the truth.
After the intense interrogation from the police, they discovered that my mother-in-law was planning on stealing my husband's bank book that he left an inheritance in, as well as his seal, and then burning down my house.
I didn't do anything wrong. That woman tried to steal my son's inheritance all to herself. You shouldn't be arresting me. You should be arresting that thief.
You're the one who tried to steal.
That's not true. Look at the body that I've been left with, and I don't have much life left. There's no way I want to be arrested. Let me go home.
You did this to yourself, didn't you?
What are you saying that I did? All I did was try to set the bad guy straight.
As we keep saying, you're the bad guy.
Excuse me? Whatever. Just hurry up and bring me that woman and send her behind bars for being a thief.
Of course, there was no way that that was going to pass, and my mother-in-law was, of course, arrested. After that, with her lower body still paralyzed, she was sent off to prison, and she was going to spend the rest of her life as a criminal behind bars. As for me, after my mother-in-law was arrested, I was finally able to regain peace in my life with my kids. We were slowly starting to stand back up from the sadness of losing my husband, and I vowed deep in my chest that I would stay strong as a single mother for my kids. And I have no doubt that my husband is already rooting for us from heaven. After that, there was no need for them to fear my mother-in-law anymore, and my children finally started to smile again. I think we are all looking towards a brighter future ahead.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.